हरि ओम। ओम सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। समस्त जन कल्याणी निरतं करुणामयम् नमामि चिन्मयं देवम् सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलि प्राञ्जलिना नतोऽस्मि। हरि ओम। We are in the fourth Kaivalya Pada of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. By now, after studying the Patanjali Yoga Sutra and coming to the concluding part, what we have understood, as told by Patanjali Maharaj, is mind, an abstract entity, intangible to the senses, standing firmly behind the senses, is a very mystical element. Mind and mind alone makes us present in this world. It is that connecting link between the consciousness and the limitation of consciousness. Consciousness, when it is not limited, consciousness, when it has no limitation of any kind, is consciousness in eternity. Consciousness, when it is a trapped consciousness, when it is limited, it becomes knowledge. Pay attention to the words. Consciousness, when is not subjected to restriction, is consciousness alone. Consciousness, when delimited, it becomes knowledge. When there is knowledge, there has to be somebody who has knowledge. And when there is knowledge, there is an experience. The sun is light. The sun gives light. Does sun give light or is sunlight? It appears that the sun gives light, but the light itself is the nature of sun. When it gets restricted by a mirror, then the reflection of the mirror is a restricted phenomenon of experience. So the knowledge, as we call it, the experience, as we call it, is nothing else but reflected light. An aperture, when the light is thrown on an aperture, a hole, it comes out from the other end, but in a limited manner, illuminates a limited number of things, creates a limited kind of experience. That is what the world is. We all are confident about the experience that we are getting every day, including the experience right now of listening to something that is being spoken, which is all creation of mind. In the reflected light of the consciousness, by the reflector called mind, through the accessories of the reflection called indriya, a limited amount of light is scattered on certain objects, leading to the experience of the presence of the objects, which we call knowledge. There's another phenomena that we must remember. Consciousness, Chaitanya, Purusha, where it exists by itself, when something exists by itself, it can't have any restrictions such as time. When the consciousness gets limited, when the consciousness gets delimited by antakarana or chitta or mind, time is born. And so is born space. In fact, what is mind? Is it an instrument which restricts the consciousness, or when the consciousness is restricted, limited, the birth of time and space creates the mind? When consciousness gets limited, time and space are born. This limitation of space and time together is nothing else but mind. So, does the mind have a life of its own? It can't, it doesn't. Mind is a creation. Every created thing has a potential to get lost or destroyed. Then what is so special about the mind? The chitta, by itself, is nothing but a creation, is absolutely useless by itself. The chitta, the antakarana, is useless by itself. Why useless? It cannot do anything on its own. It may appear that my mind is now thinking. It can't think on its own. Or my mind is deciding as a buddhi to do something. No, the mind cannot decide anything on its own. The mind gets an ability to decide, gets an ability to think, gets an ability to retain the memory only when consciousness ignites it. The consciousness has no intention of igniting anybody because consciousness is always ignited. The fire is always on. If it reaches a tree, the tree catches the fire. Similarly, chitta by itself catches the fire. It has an ability to catch the fire, catch the light. The light has no intention of getting caught. Important to remember, the light is present forever. The fire is present forever. It is not present for igniting anyone. The sun is throwing light forever. The sun is not rising in the sky to reflect in the mirror. That's not the intention. The mirror came in the way of sunlight. The mind came in the way of Purusha and the light fell on it. When consciousness falls on the mind intelligizes, it ignites. An ignited mind, an ignited chitta is now a chitta that has capacity to know. On one hand, on the back end, the chitta is constantly calling or catching the fire or the reflection of consciousness in him. And on the other hand, it is constantly catching the objects in the samsara through the sense organs. So sense organs are a continuous factory that is churning out the products coming from the objective world and throwing it in the fire of mind, which itself is the borrowed fire from the Purusha. Every object that is thrown in by the sense organs, which are like the gates on the front end of the mind, there are the gates called the sense organs who let in the objects to the chitta or the mind. The mind then recognizes, it cognizes and again cognizes, recognizes, recognition. It cognizes the object in the borrowed light of the Purusha, and this illegitimate union by the Pandit called mind of the borrowed light of Purusha and the object leads to the marriage of the sensuous objects with the consciousness of the consciousness on the altar of mind, leading to a birth of a child, which is an illegitimate child. The birth of that child, the child is called as thought, desire, vasana. By itself, the altar has no meaning. It's basically a pot. Only when the fire is there and samidha is put into it, the marriage is said to be concluded. By itself, the altar is nothing else but just a pot, useless in itself. The presence of fire in it and the presence of samidha into it leads to what is called yajna. Similarly, mind extremely inert, absolutely useless. There's no difference between virtually a stone and a mind. The only difference is the mind is the only inert substance in the world that has ability to catch the fire of Purusha, to catch the light of Purusha. Everything in this world has ability to catch the light of consciousness. That is why everything is conscious. Chaitanya Purna. The consciousness in the stone may not be having Kriya Shakti. So it is lying at one place. When Ramakrishna Paramahamsa looked at the stone and kept thinking that if the consciousness is there into it, if decided, it can also become a Kriya Shakti, and promptly the stone came down in two jumps. Tum, tum, it came down. The consciousness became activated, amply proving that the stone has consciousness. So everything in the world has consciousness, but the peculiarity of the antakarana chitta or the mind is, it is the only substance in the world that has maximum ability to catch the light of the consciousness. In other words, it is the only proximate thing to the consciousness, the most proximate, the most closest. There is light in the room, but the maximum light is coming from the window. What is the meaning of this? If you really want to go towards the light, then there is no point in going towards the wall. You have to exit through the window and the light will be yours. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. If that is the situation, then the mind works like a slab of crystal, having consciousness light on one end, like a japa kusuma. The red colored flower is giving red hue, red color to the slab of marble, slab of crystal. On another hand, there is a Indranila, that is the Vishaya, which is giving its bluish color into the red and the blue color, both when come together in the crystal, slab of crystal called mind, there is cognition, which we call as experience. And because there is an experience coming through the knowledge, this experience is misappropriated by the mind as its own experience, although it is an experience on the borrowed light of the Purusha. When the erroneous impression that I am the experiencer is born, it is called ahankara or the ego. Ego is the title taken by the absolute inert chitta when the process of experience or the knowledge happens in the chitta. The very moment chitta assumes itself as the lord of experience and becomes ahankara. Actually and factually speaking, there is neither experience, because the object is completely different thing. The light or the consciousness is completely different thing. So whatever is happening because of the combination of these two on the altar of mind is absolutely nothing. There is an erroneous impression that the water is there in the desert. So the traveler is walking towards the water. The walking is useless because the water is not there. But yet the action is happening because of erroneous impression that the water is there. Because the mind, the chitta, feels that the experience is happening, it assumes the role of experiencer. That is why the next sutra of Patanjali Maharaj says, Tad Sankheya, Tad Asankheya Vasanabhihi Chittam Api Parartha Sanhyatya Karitvat. Sanhyat Karikvat. Sanyat Karitvat is the important word. Sanyat, Samhita. We have heard this word in Vedas, Samhita. Samhita is coming together. When more than one object come together in conjunction, it is called Samhita. Sanyata Karitvat. Mind, as I told just now, is nothing else but the assemblage. Mind by itself doesn't exist. That is why in case of a yogi, the mind is not existing. It can happen when the mind is not existing in deep sleep. The assemblage. Now it is assemblage as what? It is colored by innumerable vasanas. The chitta is nothing else but the assemblage of innumerable vasanas in colorful form. Vichitram api. Tat asankheya vasanabhi chitram api. Vasanabhi chitram, colorful assemblage of all the vasanas of many births. In the absence of vasana, mind cannot exist. Mind, when it exists, it is nothing else but assemblage of vasanas. These vasanas are nothing but the impressions or the memory of the experiences that we have gone through so far. These experiences were gone through by us because of our association of sense organs with the objects. Mere experience alone does not create an impression, because mere expression, unless appropriated by the mind with the inclination of likes or dislike, it is not appropriated. Every day we see our car. So that means the mind experiences the car. But that doesn't lead to any impression on us, because it is a car that we are seeing every day. A passing by car which is superior to our car is again seen, but then that seen car, we feel that I must have it. There is a difference between the two. You saw your car, there is no impression in the mind. I saw the other car and felt I should have it. Lobhakarikatvat. That is the difference between the two things. So only mere perception does not lead to asana. Perception tinged with desire. Desireless viewing is not at all an objection in this world. Every day we see thousands of people going on the street. Nothing happens in our mind because of that. Why? There is no desire. We are not connected with them. There is a boy crying somewhere on the street. Maybe we feel little sad. There are people sitting in the restaurants. We don't mind. We just look at them and keep walking. But in those people, my son is sitting, things have changed. Now you start thinking, how the hell is he in the restaurant? He should not be eating in the restaurant. Why is he spending his time? This is his college time. Mere perception, cognition does not have any issue as such. So all such experiences through the senses which have resulted into favorable, unfavorable, ankul, pratikul response of this leading to the impression is leading to the smruti. That is what vasana is all about, and it is lying embedded. All these vasanas, colorful in toto, form a huge bundle called mind. Now from this bundle, only some of them will be taken out for fulfillment, because these are all pending orders for the fulfillment. Every time we interact with the objects outside, either through physical approach or through emotional approach or through intellectual approach, I am referring to Gurudeva's BMI chart. In whichever role, perceiver, feeler, or thinker, that you do the act, that leads to nothing else but creation of unfulfilled orders. Now, unfulfilled order can never be kept pending. It may get delayed, but the company called mind and the prapancha, they keep delivering all unfulfilled orders, and not one single order is missed. So all these unfulfilled desires which have arisen out of the experience with the objects are nothing else but the collage of this kind of unfulfilled desires creates the mind. And some part of it is taken out as prarabdha for the fulfillment. So such a mind, the chitta, although holds innumerable vasanas, the question comes, how many births will be required to fulfill these orders? Because by the time few of them are fulfilled, in one birth I create so many vasanas that the number is so large that it will require couple of births. So every time unfulfilled order stack is going up and up and up, and delivered stack is going small and small. That means there is virtually no escape from it. And the mystical point here is, instead of fulfilling all the orders that are pending in the mind, all the desires that are pending in the mind, it is better to make this company default. If the company itself closes, there is no pending order and there is nobody taking the order. So the attempt of yoga is not to create a situation whereby you can fulfill all the pending vasanas. The clever strategy used by yoga is, first you stop taking fresh orders. Tell all the sense organs that no more orders to be taken from the objects. So you practice vairagya. Vairagya is nothing else but keeping the counter closed, saying that the counter is closed for orders. The problem now is, once the inflow is stopped, whatever is already stacked inside, which is of course innumerable orders are pending, and the rule of the game in the Prakriti is every single desire has to be fulfilled. So now the question is, the yogi faces second problem. The first problem of getting in the orders is stopped. This is called ashrava in Jain philosophy. They have given the analogy of a house or a hut which is fully dirty, because the dirt is coming through all the windows. So first you close the windows so no new dirt will come inside. That is vairagya. Once that happens, then what do we do with the pending desires? Do we keep fulfilling it? Then how many births it will take for me to become freed? Then the work is not on non-fulfilling the orders. The work is on closing down the company, destroying the kitchen itself. So no cooking takes place. So what is important is, in this sutra, that mind is, because of its sanhyatakaritvat. Sanhyatakaritvat, mind is an assemblage of vasana. And the most critical and important thing is, anything that happens to work in conjunction or combination and not alone, then it is always for somebody else. It's a very important theorem in philosophy. Whenever anything is formed by assemblage or combination of different parts, then that whole thing is meant for somebody else. The car is assembled with lots of parts and then it is called car. It is meant for the user. The house is assembled by the bricks, the cement, the door, the steel. But the house is an entity which is formed by conjunction. There is nothing called, give me two houses. Two houses would mean again the bricks and conjunction. Sanghat, sanyat. And when such thing happens, whenever there is anything that is formed in combination, it is always for somebody else. This body is nothing else but Panchamahabhuta assemblage. Then this body is not for me, it is for Prakriti. Everywhere we will find that which is formed in assemblage is for somebody else. That which is not formed by assemblage is for itself, the Purusha. So the mind itself being conjugation of different vasanas, it has to be for somebody else. And that is why mind or chitta or antakaran is drusham. The object is drusham. The mind is also drusham. At times it may work as drashta. If we look at the scripture, druk drushya viveka, one may get little confused about what I am talking. Is mind drashta, drushya or druk? The mind by itself is drushya. It plays the role of drashta because of the borrowed light of druk. The sense organ and the objects are only drishyam. Mind is drishyam as well as drashta. If it doesn't have consciousness, it is drishya. If it has consciousness, it can become drashta. Then what about the purusha or the consciousness? It is neither a drishyam nor a drashta, it is druk. The objects are completely blind. The mind is sometimes blind, sometimes seeing. The consciousness is always seeing. And the fundamental theorem is anything that is formed by combination has to be for somebody else. So mind being formed because of sanyat karikatvat, vasana chitra drushya, all the vasana assemblage is nothing else but the mind. That is why mind being an assemblage, it has to be for somebody else. That which is for somebody else is a drushya. So chitta is a drushya of consciousness or purusha, which is druk. So that means the consciousness, for the consciousness, mind is the drushya. Why mind is the drushya? Because consciousness, which is infinite and eternal, has now come into looking into a small mirror. So the mirror becomes drushya. Now, becoming of drushya by mind is by accident, because consciousness itself is anyway effulgent and everywhere. Sunlight is everywhere. Suddenly the mirror appeared in between. So to the extent of the mirror, the light went inside the mirror. So consciousness went inside the mirror. Actually, consciousness cannot go inside the mirror because it is everywhere. Because it appears trapped in the mirror. In the bucket full of water, you see the sun. The sun cannot go into the water. It is not so small, but it feels as if the sun is trapped into the mirror. And then we say, oh, there is a sun in the water. Similarly, there is consciousness in the mind. We say that consciousness did not want it to get into the mind. The mind actually caught the consciousness. Then what happened? Now, to the extent of the mind has become the absorber of the light. So for the light, it becomes an reflector. Actually, for the light, there is nothing to reflect. The reflector came in between, so the mind is becoming a reflector of the consciousness. That is why mind becomes the drushya of consciousness. Now, this drushya of consciousness, so till the time chitta is there in front of the consciousness, samsara will keep happening. The reflected light will keep showing the things. But imagine when the chittam is not there, when chitta is not there, what is that the consciousness will see? Think, this is a very relevant question. I am seeing the world, the universe, the creation, the objects, everything. I am having the experience. All this is because of the chitta reflecting the consciousness. One fine day, the chitta is gone. Then what will happen? Will there be the objects, creation, prapancha? Of course, experience will not be there because the mind is gone. But when chitta goes away, when the mind dies, what is that the person sees? Does he see at all? Can you imagine something which is not the world? Our imagination cannot extend beyond the present world. Maximum, we can visualize in our mind a huge galaxies and planets and stars and billions of light years. This is all again an imagination. Imagine that is also not existing. What will be there? So hard to imagine. And such people stay with us. All the realized souls, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Vivekananda, Gurudev, all of them did this. Went beyond, there is no chitta. So what do they see? How do they look at us? What do they think of us? The question remains in our mind that if chitta is not there, the world cannot be perceived. And all these people who are realized, they are still in this world. How do they remember that they are supposed to eat? That is the sutra for the next one. Vishesha darshina atma bhava bhavana vinivrutti. Vinivrutta. Visheshena nivruttaha. What is Visheshena nivrutta? Specially retired. What is specially retired? Atma bhava bhavana. I. Atma bhava bhavana. is retired for those who have this Vishesha Darshana. Vishesha Darshana, one who is able to transcend the Chitta and see Prakriti on one side and realize that Purusha on the other side. Now see, the difficulty in understanding the status of Jivan Mukta is he is beyond the mind, he is working with the mind because he's with us. When Gurudeva was teaching Bhagavad Gita to us, he has to be in this world to teach us. Otherwise, how can he teach us? So he was working through his buddhi, using all his organs, karmendriya. He was speaking and all that. But at the same time, he was beyond Chitta. Now, beyond Chitta is Purusha when you are completely Nishkriya. There is no talking, intelligizing, nothing, no intellect, no mind for the Purusha. These Purushas are Brahma Vidvaram, Brahmi Bhutam. They are Brahman. Then how the Brahman is talking? Because Brahman is neutral. The first thing that happens to these people is, we have two questions. One is, what is exactly the nature of a Jivan Mukta? What is exactly the nature of the yogi who has transcended the Chitta? And second is, if he has transcended the Chitta, if the person has gone to America, how come he is in India? When the yogi has transcended the Chitta and gone to where he's become Purusha or whatever, does he become Purusha? That is another question. He merges with the Purusha. That's the third question actually. That is also answered. That is the subject of the last two sutras. Does the yogi who has reached the ultimate stage, does he become Purusha or does he not? Because Kaivalya has been defined as separation between Purusha and Prakriti. Recognizing Prakriti separate and Purusha separate is Kaivalya. So at the point of Kaivalya, he understands that Purusha is different and Prakriti is different. But it never says that he becomes Purusha. If he doesn't become Purusha, then where does he go? Where does he stay? That is last sutra. Right now the question is, how the one who has transcended everything is still in us. You say without Chitta, samsara is not possible. At the same breath, you say that they have gone beyond the Chitta. So how these beyond ones are coming again here and simultaneously? A Sufi describes this beautifully, saying that kabhi jahir mein, kabhi batin mein. I am there sometimes and here sometimes. वही रास्ते वही मरहले, कभी इस घर में आ बैठे, कभी उस घर में आ बैठे. See, all the Sufi things are very mystical. This highest lofty philosophy that we are discussing, they describe in one line. One Sufi says, हम वहां है जहां से खुद हमको हमारी खबर नहीं आती. A very poignant statement. हम वहां है जहां से खुद हमको हमारी खबर नहीं आती. That means my own ego is so far away from me. I am at that place where my ego itself is not reaching. So Vishesha Darshinaha, the one who has reached that stage, his Atma Bhava Bhavana is Nivrutta. What is Atma Bhava Bhavana? It's very interesting. We all know what is the question that Ramana Maharshi wanted everyone to think. Naniyar. What is Naniyar? Who am I? Isn't it? We all have that question. Who am I? That question goes away. That is Atma Bhava Bhavana Nivrutti. What are the questions? Kaha aham asam. Kaha aham asam. Who was I in the last birth? Don't we have this question? We have. Katham aham asam. Why was I that in that birth? Why? Why not something else? Kis with idam. Who am I now? Body or mind or Atman? Katham with idam. Why I have come into this state? Why I am Dr. Jadhav? Why not Pradeep Ji? I know I am not Pradeep Ji. Why not? It's a question that we have. These are all Adhyatmic questions. We are always perplexed with that question. Katham svididam. Why I came to this condition that right now I am in? And ke bhavishyamaha. What will happen to me in future? This is called jidnyasa. That jidnyasu in Bhagavad Gita is this, the one who asked this question. These are called spiritual inquiry questions. All these questions are gone for the yogi because all the questions are answered. Atma bhava bhavana nivrutti. Then, if all these questions are gone, because these are the last and the $1 million questions. Questions like how much money will I get, they have no place at all in yoga. In yoga, the biggest question is, what is this universe? How is this prapancha? How is this creation? When creation goes back, it is very easy to say that when creation resolved, it goes into a seed form and again it sprouts. How can such a huge thing become a seed? And a seed again becomes a huge thing. The pralaya, the Ishvara doing the niyaman, all these are all imaginary things for us. But in spirituality, the questions are $1 million questions. Who am I? Why did I come here? What is me? Who is me? Actually, what is my real nature? All these questions get answered at that stage. So there is no question left whatsoever. Now imagine a person who doesn't have curiosity at all. Imagine a person moving around with absolutely no question in his mind. Gurudeva, when he was roaming on this earth in India or wherever, the state of mind, now they don't have a state of mind, they have a state. We have a state of mind. In their state, no question is there in the mind. Now we again cannot imagine such a mind. There has to be there is no question. There is no query left. Then they still have chitta because they are alive. They have conquered the chitta. They have the chitta. Chitta or the mind cannot stop without thinking or without doing activity. Then what activity does the mind of a Jivan Mukta does? That is the next sutra. Tada viveka nimnam kaivalya pragbharam chittam. The chitta of the yogi, that means yogi does have a chitta. He has transcended the chitta, but it is still there because he is not dead. He has reached the stage, but he is still alive because of prarabdha. After that, he will never be born. That is a different thing. After 1951, when Gurudeva came out after the realization, he was still alive. At that point of time, alive means he had chitta. Then how was his chitta? Now the chitta was completely different. The chitta of such a viveki is kaivalya falonmukha. Kaivalya falonmukha means the chitta is directed towards the kaivalya, towards the purusha, not towards the world. If we recollect, in Samadhi Pada, in the 12th Sutra, we were discussing Bhashyam. That time, Vyasa Maharaj, the Bhashyakar, has given a statement about Chitta. Chitta Nadi Nama Ubhayato Vahini. Chitta is like a river. Ubhayato, it has two types of flows. Vahati Kalyanaya vahati papa yacha. When you get involved into the chitta is involved into the sense organs and the objects, it is vahati papa yacha. Now, these realized souls or the yogi who has reached at this stage, his chitta is not flowing towards the object. That's why Gurudeva, when he was teaching, he was interacting with us. But his chitta was not directed towards these things. His chitta was constantly directed towards the Atman, which is Vahati Kalyanaya. That is why people of Gurudeva's stature or people of yogis of highest stature cannot think anything other than Kalyana. That is what Bhagavad Gita says, Loka Kalyana. That is what Tukaram Maharaj says, Tukamane Ata now Urlo Upkara Purta. Tukaram Maharaj says, right now onwards, I am only for Upkar, Parupkar. The Papavaha stream dries off. Only Kalyana Vaha Pravaha remains. When it is Papavaha, it is Ajnana Nimna, bent towards Ajnana. Now it is Viveka Nimna. So it is Kalyana Vaha. The question again remains unanswered, that one whose chitta is constantly directed towards the Lord, towards the Purusha, how he remembers to do things in the world. Because to do things in the world, you have to come down. For example, I am hungry, I must eat. This is an activity of Karmendriya, Jnanendriya and mind. Because I'm feeling hungry. In that state, there is no hunger. How then the one who has realized still continues with his worldly activities? And the answer for that is the next sutra. Tad chidreshu pratyantarani samskarebhya. Tad chidreshu. Now this is something which we need to understand. In our case, the whole consciousness is actually coming through a small aperture into the mind, and then we are into this world. Right? These people have gone to the consciousness, yet they apply small consciousness to the mind and take help of the old samskaras. Now the question comes, all his samskaras are done. How can he take? If there is something, this is the mind, it is full of samskaras. The yogi has gone beyond the samskaras, so he will not drink from this mug, the samskar or the desire. The desires are lying here, and they are no more giving any sprouts, because he has already done vairagya and then gone beyond the mug. So there is no drinking required. But for the sake of being in the world, the yogi comes back to this mug, takes a sip of this particular thing and remains in the world. For taking the sip, the desires are already lying there. They're all burnt. The impressions are burnt. The samskaras are burnt. But burnt samskaras are still lying here. Otherwise, the mind itself will not exist, because mind is nothing else but conjugation, combination of samskaras, vasanas. So what they do is, all those samskaras which are burnt means not dead. Burnt means unable to sprout. What do? They take help of those samskaras to remain in this world. But while they are taking these samskaras to remain in this world, they are constantly aware that these samskar, this mind and this world, all the three are useless. They are already aware of it. Being left with the prarabdha, the realized soul takes recourse to the burnt samskaras, tat chidreshu, by opening or peeping through the hole of consciousness, Our problem is we have delimited the consciousness because of our mind. The realized souls, what they do is they deliberately delimit the conscious, deliberately, because they can go back. They have left the city called world, but since they know the door to go out and to come in, they can come in and they can go out because they know the door out. So that is why Gurudeva was constantly in communion with the God or the Almighty or the Purusha or the Atman, and he kept coming here also till the time the Prarabdha Vashat, the Deha path is not there. After that, there is no Prarabdha, Sanchita is no more there, then gone out forever. Tad chidreshu pratyayantarani. Pratyaya means contents of the mind. Pratyaya is content of the mind. So those samskara which are called vyuthana samskara, let us take an example. When we grow old, now we are adults. Is it not that we played with the marbles when we were small child? Now suppose that our own child calls us back to play with marbles. Don't we play with the marbles? We do. How? Because you know how to play with the marbles. Do you really enjoy it? No. You know it is useless. But for the sake of the children, you play the marbles, you know how to play the marbles. So the samskar of playing the marble is still with you, but you have already gone beyond that samskar. So it is no more creating liking, disliking in you. This is called a Loka Yatra Nivaraka Laukika Jnana or Laukika Anubhav. So all the yogis which have reached to a great stage, they still manage to come down and be with us till their prarabdha is there. And this is the period when people on the earth should be taking maximum benefit of such people, because they are greatest of the rishis par excellence. Extremely punyavan are those who come in contact with such people, because they are left with 20, 30, 10, 5 years. After that, they are not to be seen again. So during that period, they are like us. They are like exactly like us, not to be underestimated by people like us. So a realized soul is like a diamond lying in a dust. But that is the last glimpse that you are going to get in this birth. After that, we will be reborn. He will not be, unless he becomes an avatar. So a Viveka Khyati Purna Yogi is able to have Vyuthana Samskar and then takes the Vyavharika Pratyaya Jnana. But this Pratyaya Jnana will not be creating any klesha, because it is a burnt seed. Remember, Vritti and Vritti Labh, these are two different things. Having a Vritti, we have a lot of flies when we go somewhere, or flies are there. Then what happens? The fly goes in front of us. We note it. We note that there is a fly that went here. Does it create any impression on our mind? We say no, fly went. There is no anukula pratikula parinama. There is no response and reaction. Vritti alone is not a problem. Vritti labh, the response and the reaction, that is the problem. That is why Vritti alone is not a problem. So Vyuthana Samskar does make a yogi eat food when hungry. But beyond that, nothing happens. Gurudev used to like papadam a lot. How the realized person is having likes and dislikes? You are mistaken, sir. In a drama, you are a king. So when you know you are actually not a king, that doesn't stop you from doing the drama as a king. And then you can also even ask that I want the best costume, because then only I can act very well. So asking for a costume for the king is not a crime, because inside you already know that you are not a king. So being a human, you asking for papadam is not a crime, because inside you know you are not a human being, you are the Atman. Many a times the question comes to our mind that how come Swami Vivekananda used to get angry? Anger is a vikar. In the drama, the acting can be done the way you want, because you have to put it in the best possible format. Heart of heart, you already know that this is a drama, I am not a king. The drama is also not real, the king is also not real. This simultaneous awareness of both this state is a peculiar state of the yogi at that stage. That is why tat chidreshu, because of the small leakage of the consciousness, the presence of these great souls on this earth is nothing else but leakage in the consciousness. That is the difference. This solves two questions. What is the state of the chitta of realized soul? How they are able to come back in this world after going out of the world? But the third question still remains. One, what happens to three gunas? Where do they go of this yogi? Where are those three gunas? Where do they go? And two, does the yogi become Purusha, or just observes the difference between Purusha and Prakriti and stays there? Where exactly is his position? Those two questions are the two last sutras when the Patanjali Yoga Sutra treatise will end. Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Sanjay ji, we'll wait for some questions.
Hari Om. Sanjay ji. Hari Om. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. And the solution is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Isn't it?
Absolutely correct.
The whole thing lies in between. What we are learning lies in between these two sentences.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you said another question, consciousness has no limit. When it is limited, then the time and space was born. Then mind was born and knowledge, etc. And the mind catches the consciousness. Isn't it? Then we are having a body, and the body was created or made to fulfill the previous desires. And when in between, when we realizes the chitta yoga chitta vritti nirodha, once it is done, then so many accumulated vasanas are there that also will be deleted, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there will be a house, but there is no landlord.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm it. My right is now others can ask. Thank you.
Hariom, Dr. Sanjay ji. Very nicely explained again. Just my understanding, as you say, Kaivalya is not Maya or Purusha. So is it we can say as a Turiya or maybe like a Shunya, whatever it is said?
Well, Turiya is an indicative avastha, because avastha itself means limitation. Avastha is limitation. You are somebody is a limitation. You is without limit. So question now is, what is precisely Kaivalya? Kaivalya, is it going out of Prakriti first? Is it going out of Prakriti and becoming Purusha second? Or is it just going out of Prakriti and remaining with an understanding or anubhuti that Prakriti and Purusha is different? These three options are there to us. Brahmeva Brahmi Bhuta Bhavati. Brahmi Bhuta Brahmeva Bhavati. Brahme Eva Bhavati. Why they have said that? Brahma Eva Bhavati. Brahma Bhavati or Brahma Eva Bhavati? This is a very subtle philosophical speculation. He is Atma Jnani. Is he Atman? Yes, we are all Atman. Is he Paramatman? Atman, Paramatman is same. We say it in words. But the fact is, whether we become Brahman, that is one with the Brahman, and everything ends, or whether we become knowledgeable about Brahman, Anubhuti, and we stay there, because it has a bearing on coming back. See, we need to understand one thing. Brahman by itself does nothing. If it does nothing, then even it cannot take avatar. Think about this. If Atman or Parabrahman or Paramatma is Kriya Shunya, then Kriya Shunya cannot become avatar also. If that is the case, then Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Sambhavami Yuge Yuge. How would Krishna Bhagavan say, who is coming then? Brahman cannot come, or Nishkriya. But we know Krishna Bhagavan came. See, so far we just made the lip service and, again and again reiterated this shloka, but never thought about it. That is why the answer to the question whether the yogi becomes Purusha or not goes beyond Chitta, means go where? What is precisely the Kaivalya, and where does his guna go? Because so far everything is from guna. So are the gunas dead with yogi? The one who has reached the ultimate stage, are the gunas dead? That is the question answered in the last two sutras. So that will be the discussion. That is where the Yoga Shastra will end. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Sanjay ji, just a small question. You had explained that everybody will get liberation. It's a question of time, But like we always mention, there are few people who come to a class every time. So, what is it that prompts one to get onto this path? Is it sorrow or, some kind of thing which forces one to think? Is it, do people come to this purely by knowledge, the desire for that? What is it that, is a source of getting onto this path?
The incidences that are happening to get you on this path are just the nimitta matram. You lost your father, mother, children, and you suddenly felt the desperation. All these are nimitta matram. apamanam, viroda bandhubhissaha. All that is described in Bhagavata. These are mad anugraha lakshanam. Krishna Bhagavan says, if you are having sufferings in your life, that is my anugraha. Meaning what? That all these incidences, now suppose somebody doesn't have anything like this bad happening in his life, he is curious to know. Now you have a curiosity, what is Patanjali Yoga Sutra? Who am I? This is called Jidnyasu. Now the question is, nimitta matra could be anything. One has to remember, when sattva guna starts becoming vruddhingata, you will get into this line by the virtue of the guna itself. Guna guneshu vartante. So when anything, now how will you get sattva guna? Sattva guna may be by helping a person who is poor. Now actually what is the act happening? Oh, he was helping all the poor people in his life. What is the net result that he gets out of this? The sattva guna keeps increasing. So what happens? In the next birth, he will continue the welfare activities on the karma level, activity level, but his mind will now start thinking about these things like what is Yoga Shastra, what is Samadhi, what is Pranayama. That is why Janami Dharmam, that shloka said by Duryodhana, is for this reason only. Janami, I know. Nachame, pravrutti, the inclination, because the inclination comes from sattva guna. So if you keep doing through your thought, acts and deeds, all that is meant for others, a very simple solution. Think about others, act about others, feel about others. If you reverse that and do think about yourself, feel about yourself, then it is going to be tamoguna. When it is reversed outside, it is going to be sattva guna. And a rajoguna is an activity used for either of these two. To think about yourself also, you require rajoguna. To think about others also, you require rajoguna. So channelize the energy, rajoguna, towards the welfare of others, sattva guna. The sattva guna vruddhingata will there. That will not only give you the curiosity what we are discussing, it will also give an ability to understand. The buddhi has to grasp all these things so that you progress in this manner. So that is why don't be under the impression that a person right now who is speaking is very intelligent. You are mistaken. Neither I am intelligent nor you are intelligent. It is just a progress towards the sattva guna. As a side effect of sattva guna, then you get this quick memory, quick absorption of knowledge, maybe a narrative told in a better way, the act of talking, speech, these are all secondary effects. Don't get waylaid by it. Don't think you are intelligent. That is a big obstacle in this marg. We all are same. Supantha. We are on the good way, good path. So we have to do sahaya to each other. In fact, you all are Mahesha Murti. Shroto, Samartha Ramdas says, all the listeners are Mahesha Murti. Why? Because of you, I had to reorganize the thoughts. How much upakaram is coming from your side. So that is why this inclination, as you said, towards these things comes because of sattva-guna. So every time in the life, what one has to do is only think of others and their welfare. Sarve sukhinaha santu. Sarve santu niramaya. If outside, sarve. Then I, of course, will come in that later on. So this is how the curiosity goes. When the sattva-guna goes to very high level, you leave the home even at the age of 7 to go to Himalayas. What prompts you to do that? Gurudeva, such a prolific journalism, good family, he could have had good career. He leaves everything and goes towards, no, he is prompted to go. By whom? By his own sattva guna. And remember, what you have eaten in the past, you will eat now. So look at your current inclinations. Do you get up early in the morning? Do you like laziness more or the alertness more? Do you feel like reading different books? Do you feel like attending something that gives me knowledge? Are you away from the physical comforts? Are you always working for others? All this tells you what you have been doing in the past. That will also tell you how fast you will move forward. So that is how it all goes. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji.
Ji.
This verse 23 is a bit confusing because it is said that the mind is assemblage.
Yes.
And for assembly is always for someone else.
Yes.
So we feel that this someone else is the jiva, whereas it is said it is for the purusha.
Yes.
Can you please explain, Hari Om?
That is because Purusha has no interest in what the Chitta is doing. But for the sake of the Purusha that is trapped in that particular Chitta, this particular thing becomes the Drushya. Purusha by itself is Nishkriya. He has no role, nothing. He is Druk. Now we are talking about Purusha, part and parcel of it, technically trapped into the Chitta. So to that extent, the reflection of that consciousness in that mind has become Bhokta. Of what? Of the mind, whatever it is bringing. So whatever is brought on the table of Chitta by the sense organs, the cognition happens because of the consciousness trapped there, which is called Chidabhasa. So to the extent of Chidabhasa, mind is Drishyam and Chidabhasam is Drashta. To that extent. So it is like this. There's a normal man roaming on the street. That is consciousness. He was brought into a drama and asked to play the role of the king. So now who is he? He is a king. Is he the king? No, he's a normal man outside. He has become the king because of the drama. The drama is mind. Now he is the king there. So does that mean that man is a king? No. The man is a man. He became the king. Was he inclined to become the king? No. On his way, there was a drama. The drama caught him. So the mind catches the consciousness. Then the consciousness becomes a reflected consciousness because it is caught. A reflected consciousness is Chidabhas. The Chidabhas then becomes Drashta. For every Drashta, there has to be a Drushya. And that Drushya is nothing else but the Chitta, which is full of colorful Chitra, colorful Vasanas. Because if that is not caught by the Chitta, no drama is possible. Chitta may be having lots of samskara. There are objects lying there. There is a sense organ there. There is a mind there. None of them can do anything on their own. Moment the light enters, everything gets intelligized. So then immediately the Chitta starts acting, the Vasanas start acting, the sense organs start acting, the objects are perceived, knowledge is got there, experiencer is born. All this happens after the entry of the light into the Chitta. That is why Chitta is an assemblage. It is working that assemblage for that caught light, Purusha. So that is why the word used is Purusha, but it is not the Purusha at large. It is for the Purusha caught in the Chitta in the form of Chidabhasam. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
So that is why Bhagavad Gita says, Mayadhyakshena prakritihi suyade. No. Mayadhyakshena prakritihi suyade sacharajaram hedunanena kaundaya jagat viparivartade. Correct.
That is why Apara and Parabrahma and Aparabrahma. Now we will understand what is Aparabrahma. Apara is that which is trapped into this creation. That is why Ishvara is what? Mayopadhita. Maya Upadhi, whose is Ishvara. To the extent of the Maya as an Upadhi, the trapped Paramatman is called Ishwar. When Maya is not there, where is Ishwar? Ishwar never exists. Because these are the roles taken up by the Paramatman because of presence. Suppose Maya is not there, what will Ishwar do? Or suppose the Parabrahman wanted to become Ishwar, so he became Ishwar, but there is no Maya. What will he do? That means Maya and Ishwara, Avidya and Atman or Chidabhasa, these are Dvaparna, Sayuja, Sakhaya. Chandogya Upanishad, or I think Mandukya Upanishad. This is relevant from this angle. So, Apara Brahma is nothing else but getting trapped into the creation for the sake of Chalana Valana of the creation. Otherwise, the whole thing is dead by itself. It will remain dead. What is the point? If suppose there are actors standing on the stage, the drama cannot happen. The director has to come in the role of director and say that start doing this, the drama starts. The day the director decides the drama should be closed, there will be a curtain talk and all this drama will be over. Again, he feels like putting on the drama, again it will be put on. So, Srujana, Pralaya, Srujana, Pralaya, going on since ages. Hari Om.
Ishvara minus Maya is Paramatma, Purusha, isn't it?
Pardon?
You can say Ishvara minus Maya becomes Purusha in that way.
Ishvara minus Maya will not exist at all, because Ishvara is a relative thing when Maya is there. It is like saying that the glass and the water both are together, so it is a glass of water. When the water is not there, will it be glass? Because they always come in combination. So Ishvara is existing in its existence itself, its relevance itself is because Maya is there. Maya is not there. There is no role left for Ishvara. Because that consciousness without Maya is basically undifferentiated Paramatman.
Okay. Very good.
Hari Om, Sanjay.